For decades, the United States Navy has maintained absolute command over the global commons. The U.S. currently deploys 4.5 million tons of steel to project military influence and respond to crises across every major ocean. At the center of this presence is the Nimitz-class nuclear supercarrier. These vessels carry the fuel and electrical margins required to operate at sea for months without docking. Each carrier hosts an air wing of FA-18 Super Hornets, capable of striking inland targets anywhere on Earth with precision. But despite this capability, the U.S. Navy's status as the world's undisputed #1 is entering a period of strategic turmoil. Raw technological supremacy is no longer a guaranteed ticket to global dominance. In 2020, the People's Liberation Army Navy officially surpassed the United States in raw fleet size, fielding 331 ships compared to the American fleet of 290. China's strategy relies on anti-access area denial, a network of sensors and weapons keeping foreign forces away from contested zones. Long-range hypersonic missiles turn these nuclear supercarriers into highly conspicuous targets, allowing adversaries to threaten massive American assets from the shore. Building these hyper-complex platforms requires years of specialized labor and billions in capital, meaning every loss creates a gap in the fleet that takes nearly a decade to replace. In a high-intensity war of attrition, the ability to absorb damage and rapidly regenerate hulls becomes as vital as individual firepower. Without that industrial backing, the U.S. fleet functions as a glass cannon, lethal on the first day of a conflict, but dangerously fragile over a long war. Historically, U.S. naval supremacy was forged through overwhelming industrial output. Admiral Alfred Thayer Mahan argued that a nation's military sea power is only as strong as its commercial maritime foundation, its trade routes, its merchant marine, and its shipyards. Theodore Roosevelt used this logic to build the Great White Fleet, sending 16 battleships around the globe to prove that American reach had become permanent. During World War II, the Two-Ocean Navy Act enabled the U.S. to outbuild every rival simultaneously, launching thousands of ships and commanding 70% of the world's naval tonnage. Admiral Rickover then added unlimited endurance to this massive scale by developing the USS Nautilus, the world's first nuclear-powered submarine. For over a century, the U.S. Navy stayed at the top because it could regenerate itself under fire, an industrial muscle that has now largely atrophied. Today, Beijing is following the 20th century American playbook, prioritizing a massive dual-use maritime sector that blends civilian shipbuilding with military production. The results are stark. China's shipbuilding capacity is estimated at 200 times greater than the United States. This allows China to surge up to 5,500 auxiliary vessels, completely overwhelming the 80 comparable ships in the U.S. logistical fleet. In contrast, modern replacement ships, like the Constellation-class frigate, face years of delays because of design instability and a lack of skilled shipyard workers. Deterrence in the Indo-Pacific now depends on industrial endurance, and by that measure, the United States is dangerously behind. It is now clear that the United States cannot simply outbuild China domestically to solve this crisis in the short term. The latest national security strategy forces a transition away from concentrated power toward a more distributed and resilient architecture. This involves a pivot to a hybrid fleet, reducing the reliance on a few giant supercarriers in favor of smaller, more numerous assets. The Navy aims to field 150 unmanned surface vessels by 2045, creating a network of sensors and weapons that are both cheaper to build and easier to replace. To bypass domestic bottlenecks, Washington is integrating allied shipbuilding capacity, leveraging high-tech shipyards in Japan and South Korea. The Navy is also refocusing on strategic maritime choke points, like the Panama Canal, Red Sea, and Strait of Hormuz, to maintain economic leverage. Legacy assets like the USS Gerald R. Ford will still lead, but they will operate as command nodes for this wider, highly distributed allied network. Staying at #1 requires the U.S. Navy to evolve from a brittle force of isolated giants into a resilient, integrated, and allied maritime ecosystem.